Hello, my wonderful office workplace warriors out there. Welcome back to another episode of Dear HR Diary. All the fun stuff you wish you learned in management school that they didn't bother to teach you. And today is no different. You probably hear my scratchy voice. I'm getting over a cold, so bear with my crazy voice today. I don't know, maybe some people like that kind of crazy voice, but I have a fabulous guest. We'll call him Dr. Bob. Dr. Robert Hurst is a Harvard graduate. Ooh, and an experienced orthodontist. Now you're going to be like, Don, why do you have an orthodontist on your podcast? Wait until you hear about this podcast guest. He has over 50 years of practice. He's treated thousands of patients and observed firsthand how birth order, yes, the order in which you were born, affects behavior patterns and their family dynamics. His research uncovered the Rosetta Stone. I love that. To understanding everyone. The double birth order has shared his observation in his books, Life's Fingerprints, How Birth Order Affects Your Path Throughout Life. We're going to have a fabulous discussion today. In fact, we kind of got started and I'm like, wait, I want to record this. So welcome to the show, Dr. Bob. We're so glad to have you.
Well, I'm so glad to be here and having your audience listen to all the information about birth order. It's going to affect their life.
Oh my gosh, I'm super, super excited. So we kind of started talking about, I was telling him I'm the oldest. I have two younger sisters. One of them is a half sister. And then I have I hate to call her full sister because that sounds so weird. Like, and I hate to call them half, but I actually have another sister. My sister Shanna did a podcast with me. So fun thing. But tell me kind of what I know. People are like, what's birth order? I kind of get that, but in your research, like how would you describe this to the listeners on what birth order is?
Well, in the simplest terms, it's your chronological order of birth. The firstborn, of course, starts out as an only child. And then the firstborn becomes a firstborn when the secondborn is born. Then you have a third, and it goes on for there. But as an orthodontist, I wanted to find out a way to understand my patients quickly. And so I thought, I'll try this birth order idea. And everything I read, it talked about the only child and the first three children. And I looked at that, and it didn't really work that well. And I looked closer, and I found out really there were four. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it starts all over again. A 5 is kind of like a 1, a 6 is like a 2, but it's like primary and secondary colors. It's the same color, but it's not as brilliant or the hue is a little bit different. But that alone was not enough for me to understand what was going on, because when I looked more closely, only a third of my patients fit those birth order profiles.
Huh.
And each birth order has, like the only child is a very self-confident child, but could also be like a little adult.
Yeah.
And the parents look to that child like another adult. A firstborn, they like to give orders. That's you, Dawn.
I do like to give orders.
Yeah, they like to
Yay.
be in charge. They're the border collie. They want to make everything is. And number two doesn't like to be told what to do. They want to protect their own space.
Oh my
They're not
gosh.
telling others what to do, but they're thought to be stubborn. Some people call them the middle child. But how can you have a middle child when you have 4 kids in the family? You have a number 2. It's not just a middle child, it's a 2.
Yeah.
And then you have the 3. Now the 3, that's the person that really understands relationships. When they're born, they have to understand 17 different relationships between the other kids and the parents and the parents and the kids. And they're great at group dynamics, but they're laughing on the outside, crying on the inside, because they're so sensitive that they don't want anyone to know how sensitive they are. So they kind of have a shield around them to protect themselves. And then number 4, that's the true baby in the family. That's the one that is kind of loud because no one wants to listen to the baby. And of course, everyone takes care of the baby and picks up after them. And my number 4 kids, when they walk out the office, they drop their appointment card on the way, and has to be another sibling that pick up the appointment card. Anyway, when I used this, it only worked a third of the time, and I said I was about ready to give it up, and I decided to do a study of all these families. And I treat a lot of kids in the same family.
Yeah.
What I found was there were a 4-year or more gap between 2/3 of all my patients. Now, maybe that was true because those are the families that could afford orthodontic treatment for their patients, for their kids, And that's why I was seeing them as patients. And then when I looked at it, I realized these children, being 4 or more years apart, were kept at home and treated like only children while the other siblings were away at school.
Mm.
So they developed a double birth order. They had that of an only child and then that of their ordinal number. So what that does, it amplifies, intensifies, and magnifies all the characteristics. For instance, if a number 2 is stubborn, a number 2 only is an immovable object. Okay,
Oh
so
my gosh.
it really gives them lots of power. And when I did that, all of a sudden it worked. And I call that the Rosetta Stone of understanding birth order. So there's not just 4 birth orders.
Yeah.
There's more like, 17 or 18. And when you look at that carefully, then everything fits. Now there is one other type of double birth order, and I'll give you an example of that. Princess Di, who everyone knows,
Yeah.
she had a double birth order, but it wasn't one with an only. She had 2 older sisters, and then there was a big gap, and then she and her younger brother were born. So she was the third born, but she's the oldest in the second family. So she had characteristics of a number 1 and of a number 3. So the number 1 was the one that wanted to fight the royal family and take charge. And the number 3 was the one that was sensitive and caring about the world and was trying to pick up landmines that were left from former wars. And, she was a more complicated person than just a single birth order. So that's the other type of double birth order.
That's
So when you get that
fascinating.
down, now you'll start to, we're talking about in the workplace.
Yeah.
Well, every company has a birth order. And the birth order of that company is usually set by the CEO. For instance, Gates is a number 2, and he treated his employees like number 2s. He didn't want to tell them what to do, and he treated them all as individual contractors. Well, that doesn't always work.
Yeah.
But also as an HR person in a company, you have to be careful that you don't hire everybody like yourself. And in a company, if you put together a team is like a family. And in a family, everybody has a different birth order. They don't have the same. So if you put similar birth orders on the same team, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
They're going to be fighting each other. So you want people on the team with all different birth orders because they bring to the team just different ideas. So, now the other thing is, if people have double birth orders in a company, that's a person that's rather unique and very strong. And they may not get along with the others, but also every time they come to work, they may be a different person. So
You don't
they
know what
can also-
personality you're getting.
you don't know who you're getting that day. And all these things are so important in the workplace. I mean, to know what your birth order of your boss is, that's important, especially if you want to go ask for a raise.
This is a great,
Uh,
I mean, this is kind of fun. And I mean, you think HR wise, right? I mean, we can't ask them when they were born, but you could definitely ask them what their birth order is. I mean, that's fascinating. And just
it's
having that knowledge is crazy. Like I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I need to ask my boss where she is because it's so a little bit
oh,
about a
it's
little bit
very
about,
easy.
I
Yeah.
think this is fascinating. I am married to an older, he's the oldest, he has a younger brother. And I'm just kind of comparing that. And then he was part of a blended family. Now I have a blended family. I have 4 sons, and then my husband and I had a daughter together. So we have 4 boys and 1 girl. And so I'm just kind of laughing because the girl is actually 8 years younger than her youngest older brother. But when you were talking about the baby, my 4th born, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so true. He is the loudest. He is the most forgetful. I just laugh. I'm like, that is so Jacob. And then the
Birth.
sensitive one, Avery to a T, like he's my 3rd, a very sensitive. Now he doesn't want people to know that, but big heart, very sensitive guy. So I'm just sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, I just look at my own sons and I can see this.
Birth order is the force that runs behind all our lives. We don't realize it, but it's helping us. It knows how we make our decisions and who we interact with and who we marry. There's 2 types of love at first sight. One is, you got one of them, when you meet someone with your same birth order. The problem with that is that there can only be one image in the mirror at a time. Somebody has to step away and they take different roles within the family, but you're very much alike. You're two number ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it does get a little hairy when you get a dethroning of a number one. Now, what that means is number two wants to be the number one. They want to knock off the person on the throne. And so number one is usually the better student. And if number one slips a little bit in school, number two is now the straight A student. And they've demoted number one. Number one doesn't like to be demoted, and sometimes they just drop out. But the other thing can be true too. Number one can overwhelm that number two and be not only the best student, but also the good athlete. So it doesn't give number two a chance at anything to be different. And every child wants to be different.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the workplace, I'll give you a little story about a workplace. There was a company I was dealing with, and the secretary of the CEO, she talked to me one day. She said, you know, we were down in Miami waiting for a plane, and we decided to get something to eat. And my boss ordered a Dr. Pepper, and I'd never had a Dr. Pepper. So I said to him, could I have a sip of your Dr. Pepper? And he said, no, I'm an only child, and I don't share. So, you know, he didn't know anything about birth order, but that's one type of only child. He wasn't going to share. He said, I couldn't believe it. He wouldn't let me have any of his Dr. Pepper. Okay. So when I'm with HR people, they say, look, with all the rules, how am I going to get this information?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is how I tell them to do it. It's so simple. All you do, you're sitting at your desk and you're interviewing them, and you say, do you have any brothers or sisters? And you don't have to say anything else, because they will say, I have so many, and this is who I grew up with. And then all you say for the second question is, were there any big spaces between any of the kids, 4 or more school years between anybody? And they say, oh, yes, between my youngest one, in your case, the youngest one, there's an 8-year difference. So you know immediately all the double birth orders, all the single birth orders, without breaking any federal rules.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
That is, I love that. And you know, it's funny because like if somebody were to ask me being the oldest child, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, and I was the oldest. I'm the oldest of 3. You know, it's kind of funny.
Sure.
And that just kind of comes out of my mouth when people are like, do you have any brothers or sisters? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the oldest of 3. I had 3 sisters. There's 3 of us, 3 girls. And so it's just really kind of just a common conversation. And there's nothing illegal about asking if you have siblings or not. So I know some of my HR people that listen to the show are like, how would I get this information? How like you can do it legally? I mean, there's no fear there. So I love that. So did you like share this information with your practice, like with your clients?
Yes, I did. Well, actually, I had a pediatrician that I was seeing his kids, and I ended up treating him. And he said, wait a minute, you have to share this information. I said, I'm not an author. He says, well, you better be, because all this information fits with all my patients in my pediatric practice. It just takes all the stress out of it, knowing what I'm dealing with. So I wrote the book, Life's Fingerprint, How Birth Order Affects Your Path Throughout Life. Now, the first edition was a paperback, and that ended up on Amazon. But then second edition was a hardcover in color. It has a section in the back from all the questions that I was asked at different presentations. And it makes a great coffee book table. But we also have it off our website in a USB. Let me show you one here. This is like a little credit card.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
And at USB, you can just plug it into your computer. But yeah, it and gives you all the information that's in the book and the pictures and everything in color. But once we've talked to a lot of HR people, and like you said, the first they say is, how can I get this information? And then what we found out was certain birth orders fit certain jobs within businesses. Yeah. Like you don't want to put, although a number 3 is great with groups, you don't want to put a number 3 as the person that's running the group, because number 1 wants to run the group.
Yeah.
And if you put number 3 up there and number 1 is in the group, they don't see number 3 as the leader. They see themselves as more powerful than number 3. And then they'll talk behind their back and say, Well, they just don't know what they're doing. I need to be in charge. So different birth orders take different roles within business positions. And some people like to work by themselves, some like to work in a group. Those number threes and number fours, they like to work in groups.
Yeah.
But number one and number two, they want to be a little alone. Like number twos love to be the accountants.
Oh my
They sit
gosh,
in
that's awesome.
and they work the numbers.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
so funny. Now I'm thinking of people that I've worked with. I almost want to like send them a message and find out, kind of what their birth order is. This is hilarious. So my husband is the president of a bank. And while I'm the, first born too, he does not understand why I didn't want to be like the president of something. And I'm like, first of all, that doesn't light my bubble, but I do like to take charge of groups. So if I'm in a, you go to like team building stuff or you're doing, you're at a networking event or something, it's
right,
usually me that's working the room. Because I'm like,
right.
I like to run the meeting. I like to be the one that's in charge. But my husband is the same way. So we almost divide and conquer when we're like at networking events. It's just hilarious.
You're a
So
powerful team.
yeah, I could definitely see some of this. And then I look at when you were talking about sports, I look at my sister, who is a drug and alcohol. She is the director of a drug and alcohol clinic, recovering. So she works with addicts, but she was super super good in sports, and since we were so close like in age, like she's a little less than 2 years younger than me, she followed me through high school. And so it was really kind of funny because people were like, oh, you're Dawn's sister, and she was like, no, I'm Shanna. And so it was almost like she really needed to do something to show that she wasn't just Dawn's sister.
Exactly, and that's what they don't want to be compared to another sibling.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about two girls a year or so apart is that number one is so strong, and number two looks up to number one, and they're kind of held down until number one graduates from high school. All of a sudden, number two blooms.
Yep.
I mean, they just blossom like you
Yep.
wouldn't believe. And they say, where were you hiding all this time? Well, I was hiding under number one. Okay. So you've kind of squashed her down there for a while, but as soon as you left high school, she just
She's
became
like,
herself.
woohoo.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
That's awesome. So this would be great. A kind of a great challenge for my listeners is to like go out and look at your teams or look at your coworkers and, kind of discover where that birth order is. And I think that really will help you either on team projects or communication. I mean, obviously, all these different birth orders communicate in different ways or like to be communicated to or have their own communication styles. So,
Absolutely. Like you never want to tell number two what to do. You want number two to give number two choices, and number two will be great once they pick one of those choices. It's like with your kids, you say, well, we're going to go out to a fast food restaurant, and I don't want to go. You say, no, we're going to go to either McDonald's or Wendy's or Burger King. Which one would you like to go to? Oh, once they make that decision. So, this is how you get around that quote stubborn two. They're not stubborn. They just don't want to be told what to do.
they want options. What about your threes? They're the sensitive ones. How do you communicate with them?
Well, with threes, they're so sensitive. You don't want to shame a number three.
Mm,
You don't, I mean, they are going to take everything so personally, and they're, of course, not going to show it. So they're going to clam up and they're going to become, would you believe this? Rosie O'Donnell is a number three.
whoa.
Yes, but she has built a wall around herself so she doesn't get hurt. That's why she's so tough on the outside, but she's not. And um, I'm trying to think of the woman in India who was um, took care of the indigent and whatever, but she was
Yeah.
also a number three. And there you can have very different personalities in both. Every birth order has two sides. They have a
Okay.
positive side and a negative side. I'll give you an example of a number ones. A number one would be a Hillary Clinton, who is very strong and very voices who she is. But Julia Childs was also a number one. And they both want to control. Julia Childs controlled you through food.
Hmm.
She cooked for you. She'd take care of you. Well, that's another type of side of number one, and you probably do that too. You all have every birth order has two sides to them. So some people say, "Wait a minute, that's not a number one. I'm not like that." Oh, yes, you are. There's another side to you. Well, that's not a number two. I'm not like that. At times, you are like that. So every birth order has two sides to them. So that can be a little confusing, but once you understand it, you understand the same. You number ones want to be in charge. How you do it could be giving orders or just being so nice that, why you couldn't be mean to me now. Okay.
Oh my gosh. So do you see, I mean, I know you talked about the CFOs or, the accountants, number twos. What do you see like number threes and number fours doing in like the career world? I mean, do they almost have, very unique areas that they like to kind of gather towards or lean towards?
Sure. Well, let's start with number four. Number four grew up with older siblings.
Right.
So number four is not intimidated by older people or people in charge. They can be great salesmen, and they're great with people because they had all these siblings that were around them growing up. So they know the ins and outs and how to work with all kinds of people because they had to do it growing up.
Yeah.
Number three are somewhat similar, except number threes are a little bit more sensitive and they see life, they see the big picture. They want to save the world.
Yeah.
And they like working in groups. Interacting with other people in the group. It doesn't make any difference what their birth order is. They're just, part of the big group. And so they're not intimidated by all the different personalities. So if you have a situation where they have to work in a group, that's a number three. It's good for that.
Okay. That's awesome. And then your number twos are your accountants and
Right.
your numbers people. And then your number ones are, not us. Like we don't like to take charge. So as you're building these teams, listeners, this is great for you to kind of figure this out. This might be a fun like opening meeting. Like if you're doing an icebreaker, this might be a fun little icebreaker.
Right.
So like go get his book and then you can read all these characteristics and you could be like, oh my gosh, Susie's a one that totally makes sense now. And now I know, she wants to take charge. So I should give her some of those projects where she gets to take charge of something. Or Tommy's my number three, he's third, and so we know that he's going to be sensitive but he's very passionate, likes working with people and just likes to see the good and wants to help people. So I mean, I honestly
They
could
also
see
like to
how
work
this.
with their hands. They like to
Okay.
work. Number three is like, they're good workmen with, crafts and
Okay,
things
so
like that.
I have
They
to tell
like
you
to,
something funny. My number three, Avery, he's a tattoo artist, and
there you
so
go.
very sensitive. He got a degree in physical therapy, and then decided that's not what he wanted to do. Very talented artist, and then just now does tattoo work, and just I just you every time you say something about this, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so Avery. And then my youngest son, is in the army. And he's an army medic. So gets along with all kinds of different people. People do not face him. He doesn't care if you're, a 4-star colonel or whatever. He,
Right.
to him, you're just another person that's in the army. Now he's respectful. So, he's not disrespectful or
Sure,
anything like
sure,
that, but
sure.
he's also like, it's not to the point that he's super intimidated by that. Like titles don't mean anything really to him, quite frankly, other than boss when his boss tells him stuff to do. But I mean, this is just really interesting just to think, even in your own kids or people that you work with, or just this is just kind of a fascinating thing. And it's unique because a lot of times you could take those personality quizzes like Myers-Briggs, or you could take the disc, and you could
Right.
kind of see what characteristics you carry.
I've
Like,
used them all. Right.
yeah. I'm a high I, and for the disc thing, and it's just kind of interesting because people are like, that's not surprising. But then you bring in this birth order. I just think it's a really unique, different way to look at it. That's not like a typical assessment. It's not a typical Myers-Briggs or not a typical strength fighters, but I also could see where you're like, you take your because I'm strength finder certified, you take your strength finder piece, and I look at what you're telling me about birth order, and they line up. Like it's just fascinating. This is just okay. So this is the reason that I have these 5 strengths. It's my birth order. So it's almost like the why behind just making
Exactly.
sense.
It's what happened. But the other thing that's unique about my book that's not in any others is that it's just not the number. There's about 7 or 8 things you have to answer to find your real birth order. Because, for instance, are you spaced? Are there spacing? So you end up with a double birth order.
Yeah.
Did you have stepbrothers and sisters? Who did you live with growing up? Did one of the children end up living with grandparents and then the other kids lived with the family? Was there a handicapped child in the family? Were there twins or triplets in the family? Were there adopted siblings? So there's about seven questions you need to find. Then once you find your real birth order, then you can look at all those characteristics. In your case, well, there was a half sister,
Yeah.
but that half sister was younger than you, so she doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
It's the ones above you that affect you, and she didn't live in the same
Yeah.
house.
She didn't live with us. In fact, I
Yeah.
didn't get to know her until she was 18 and I was 21 when I met her. So
So she was basically an only
yeah,
child.
she was totally raised as an only child, quite frankly.
Yeah,
And now, now that we're adults and, we hang out together pretty regularly. So, that's kind of interesting just thinking about her because she's going to lean more towards being an only child, that
exactly,
characteristic.
exactly.
And it's almost my daughter. So when you're talking about these different birth orders and you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it starts over with number 5. I mean, there's a lot of different characteristics that Haley carries that's like a one child, but also like the baby of the family. So it's
Sure.
just very unique in looking at how she manages stuff. And she is like a baby in the aspect that people with big titles don't phase her. She can go up and talk to anybody. She's been raised around her older brothers. And so she really had to learn kind of how to adapt in that type of life, as well as kind of how to talk to adults. Like she actually spent more time with the teachers than she did with the kids. In fact, the teacher would be like, "Your daughter is always hanging out with me. It's so weird." I'm like, that's because she's been around her older brothers her whole life. So she's had to talk to adults her whole life.
Sure.
So it's kind of funny. But I think that's fascinating if you look at kind of the stuff that comprises those different personality tests. And now this is like almost like this aha moment. Like I'm super excited to go back and look at some of those assessments that I've done and kind of read through the book and be like, okay, this totally makes sense. So, oh my gosh. Well, Dr. Bob, this has been such a fascinating question or such a fascinating thing. I'm super excited about it because it's like, it's almost all these little buttons are kind of clicking. And so this kind of
Wonderful.
stuff just fascinates me. But we'll leave Dr. Bob's information in the show notes, along with his website, link to his book. Highly recommend go out and get it. I actually have mine on order, so I'm super excited. I can't wait to get it. And I have a big coffee table book, if you will. So I'm excited about that coming. And, obviously you all have homework, and that's to like go out and find out birth orders to your friends, your coworkers, and then you can put
And
this
your
stuff together.
wives and husbands.
Your wives and husbands, yeah, do that as well. And then look at your own children and kind of see how they all relate. So you could be like, oh my gosh, this explains so much as to why Katie is the way she is. Now you can have an excuse. Well, as we start wrapping up, what's one little nugget that you'd like to leave with the listeners?
Well, if you finally get a hold on birth order, it's going to decrease the stress in your life because everybody you interact with, you're going to quickly figure out their birth orders, a couple of questions, and you're going to know exactly how to respond to them. And that way you won't be disappointed in people that you hope were going to do something that you didn't expect.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't come as a surprise.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks again for popping on the podcast. This has been a true delight. Really appreciate all the listeners tuning in. This has been a fun podcast. I hope you all got a lot out of this, as did I, because again, this is stuff they don't teach you in management school or any school.
That's right.
As Dr. Bob can attest, they don't really teach it anywhere. So he
I
went
had to
out.
learn myself.
Yeah,
Right.
he did it himself. Thanks again. I hope everyone has a fantastic week. Until next time, stay fabulous.